Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to NEWSROOM. I'm your host, Khalid. But today is the 7th of May 2024, and these are the stories that we will be highlighting during the course of the show. We'll begin with the day 214 of the Israel-Palestine war, the genocide, the ethnic cleansing, the war against humanity, the crimes against humanity that are going on unabated on this day 214, despite the fact that Hamas has now agreed to a truce that was brokered by important countries. The Israeli side is yet to say yes to that ceasefire agreement. The fact is also that the number of casualties keeps on increasing with every passing day, with every passing hour. Another sad truth is that Israel is also hell-bent on going forward with the ground invasion of Rafah. What kind of eventualities would that come up with in the next coming days? That is something that could be anybody's guess, but the fact is that the responsibility on the important backers of Israel, on the important backers of any truce or ceasefire agreement between Palestine and Israel becomes even more paramount, not only for Palestine but for the whole Middle East region. This is going to be our first segment. Our second segment, ladies and gentlemen, concerns Pakistan and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. The relations between the two important brotherly countries that have continued to prosper, strengthen with every passing year. There has been a 50-member high-level business delegation from Saudi Arabia under the leadership of the Saudi Deputy Investment Minister Ibrahim Al-Mubarak, who is attending a two-day Pakistan-Saudi Arabia investment conference which opened on Monday. Important decisions were taken, important statements, announcements were made. Also, there is a resolve from both the Saudi side as well as from the Pakistani side to further strengthen the economic partnership that both the countries are enjoying. In different fields, there are certain avenues that have been highlighted during the course of this investment conference, as well as during the previous visits of our Premier to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the visits of the Saudi delegations to Pakistan. We'll be highlighting different aspects of these in our second story. Then we'll be talking about Turkey's Erdogan, who has opened a mosque converted from an ancient Orthodox church in Istanbul for Muslim worship 4 years after he had ordered its transformation. The Kariyemosque was formerly a Byzantine church, then a mosque, and then a museum, and now it is open as a mosque. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, we will be talking of a risk gene that further aggravates the Alzheimer's. We all know what Alzheimer's is. Slowly and steadily, it's a degradation of your mental acumen, due to which you start forgetting things and start not acting normally. At least mentally, you forget who you are, where you are, you forget who are in your surroundings, and a lot of other things. And this is a steady degradation of your mental acumen. Now, individuals carrying two copies of the APOE4 gene are virtually guaranteed to develop Alzheimer's and face symptoms at an earlier age. This has been told by researchers in a study that was carried out very recently. It's an interesting study, and I hope this can lead up to the discovery of medicine also to counter Alzheimer's. Let's begin with our first segment, and that concerns the Palestine war, day 214, whether it be the ceasefire possibilities, whether it be the ground invasion or possible ground invasion into Rafah, whether it be the different points of views of countries, or whether it be the protests that have been going on by the students across the world, from the United States of America to the European Union to Australia, and the list goes on and on. What is all this going to lead to? We've been joined by Maleeha Lodhi. She's a former ambassador to the United Nations to discuss various aspects of this war. Dr. Saiba, thank you very much to have joined us. I'll begin my discussion with this whole complexity of the possible Rafah invasion, and B, Hamas agreeing to a ceasefire agreement. What does all of this exactly mean? Because the whole thing seems extremely complicated. On the one hand, we've got Hamas that says that it is ready to move ahead with the agreement. Israel says it's not ready, and it also says that US did not give it the assurances or the details regarding Hamas's agreement to it all. There is momentum, but there is a very complex kind of momentum as far as this ceasefire deal is concerned. What is your point of view?
Well, to begin with, an Israeli invasion of Rafah seems to be imminent. as you yourself mentioned, Israel has seized control of the Rafah crossing in Gaza, and it has closed this crossing, an action that has earned wide international condemnation, including from the UN Secretary General. So with an invasion imminent, I think then the danger grows of what could be a catastrophic disaster in Rafah. As you know, there are about 1.4 million Palestinians that are crowded in this very tiny space, in this very tiny, in this one city. And therefore, any kind of ground assault, along with, of course, bombardment, will lead to the kind of catastrophic consequences which will be really chilling for the world to sort of watch and for the Palestinians to suffer. I think the Palestinians have already suffered so much in 7 months of Israel's brutal war on Gaza. So on the one hand, we are witnessing the fact that Israel is now about to go in. On the other hand, there are these talks which you also mentioned, and to which the Israeli government has sent a mid-level delegation. But there are doubts on whether this delegation has even the mandate to negotiate, because the delegation doesn't consist of principals. Plus, the kind of statements coming from the Israeli government doesn't seem to suggest that Israel is seriously going to approach these talks. Perhaps it's just using dispatching this delegation as a smoke screen for what it wants to do, which is another bloodbath of the Palestinians. So this is a very dangerous point. The Secretary General of the United Nations has already said that if Israel does mount this assault on Rafah, it would be a strategic mistake, it would be a political calamity, it would also be a humanitarian nightmare. Because remember, what has happened also by Israel taking over the Rafah crossing is that it has halted all assistance going in. And this at a time when the Palestinians are facing famine and such dire conditions. So really, this is the point at which we are at. It's a very uncertain situation, but it's also a very explosive situation.
In all of this explosive situation, Dr. Maleeha Lodhi, what is the political landscape as far as Israel, United States, where we see a lot of protests going on, and the Middle East is concerned? Do you feel this political landscape is going to deteriorate in the coming days if the Rafah invasion does occur?
Well, that is going to it's going to be a game changer. It's going to really also widen the rift, and there is a rift between now the Biden administration and Netanyahu's government. I think you're going to see that rift widen because, as you know, the U.S., including Biden himself, has been warning Israel against taking such action and mounting a ground invasion or a ground assault on Rafah. And the United States isn't the only country. Many other countries, of course, the Muslim world, Muslim countries, we've heard a very strong statement from Saudi Arabia, and many other Muslim countries have also been warning and condemning. Many Western countries also have been warning. The political head of the EU has also warned of dire consequences of this. So when you talk about the overall global landscape, again, we're actually looking at Israel increasingly isolated in what it intends to do. But that doesn't seem to be deterring Israel from pressing ahead. Perhaps the United States has not mounted the kind of decisive pressure, or alternatively, perhaps Prime Minister Netanyahu is simply not listening to the United States anymore. So yes, you're right, there have been protests across the world, particularly now in campuses in the United States. So, the public pressure has been mounting. Global public opinion is very clear. They want an end to this war. They want an end to the suffering of the Palestinian people. And in Israel itself, last night I've seen reports that there were huge demonstrations against the Israeli government and asking them to accept the ceasefire proposal that, as you said, Hamas has already agreed to. So, the situation is wide open, but it portends great danger ahead.
All right. Now, Jordanian Foreign Minister Ayman Safadi calls for an immediate and strong action by the United Nations Security Council to prevent another massacre in Rafah. He calls on the Israeli government and he talks about it, and he says that, it has closed the Rafah crossing that we've just talked about. And therefore, because of the closing of the Rafah border, the humanitarian aid is also restricted from entering Palestine. This should be catered to instead of giving negotiations on hostage deals and a ceasefire chance. Netanyahu needs to face real consequences. We've also gotten the statement from Turkey that has halted its relations with Israel because of this very fact. What are you seeing as far as diplomatic relationships between Israel and the Middle East, or Israel and its previous allies or friendly countries is concerned? Is this going to take a blow as well? And if so, what impact will it have on Israel?
Well, of course, it's already taken a blow. As I said before, Israel is isolated. It's now diplomatically isolated, not just in the Middle East, but across the world. Even Western countries that were previously supportive of Israel are now critiquing Israel and warning Israel of not taking the step that it is intending to take by a ground invasion of Rafah. And don't forget, Western countries have also been asking Israel to allow humanitarian access so that assistance can flow in. And that hasn't really happened on the scale that is required. So, I don't think Israel right now is at a point where it is being supported by many countries. The United States, as I mentioned before, itself is now very, very apprehensive of what might happen. It has continued to call for what they call a hostage deal or a ceasefire in return for the release of hostages. So this is where we are right now. I think what we have to also acknowledge, and it's a sad acknowledgement, that the UN Security Council has failed. It has failed, first of all, to have its ceasefire resolution that was adopted a month or so ago implemented. It was supposed to be implemented during Ramzan. It never was. Israel defied it. And then subsequently, we have not seen the kind of action by the Security Council which would involve sanctions on Israel so that the costs of what Israel is doing are raised to the point that Israel is forced to listen. It hasn't done that. So I would say this is a great failure of the UN Security Council. It's also a failure of the entire international community. It's a failure of the Muslim world.
But Dr. Maleeha, the fact is, you talk of the United Nations Security Council, but we should also remember that there is the whole thing hinges on the power of the veto that the US or other countries have time and again utilized so that resolutions are not able to pass. Shouldn't there be an overhaul of the whole system on how resolutions are passed in the United Nations Security Council, in your point of view, looking at the way the whole situation in Palestine has been handled?
No, I don't think that's about to happen. So I think to try to focus on how that can be changed, I think is right now, I think it's besides the point, frankly. I mean, one can talk about it, sure. The veto is a huge stumbling block. But I think more importantly, it's the division amongst the big powers that has been a stumbling block. And even when the Security Council did agree, all the members did agree, and let a resolution be adopted, even then it was not implemented because it didn't have the executing power, if you like, or the machinery. And on that, for it to have that, requires the kind of agreement amongst the big powers that we have not seen forthcoming in recent weeks. So the question is really, where does the international community stand now? Can it still prevent a bloodbath, a genocide in Rafah? Or is it going to just be, not a silent bystander, but just a bystander that keeps talking, condemning, denouncing, but unable really to stop the murderous assault?
Is there going to be a tip of the iceberg? Is there going to be that tipping point after which we will see very strong reactions from certain quarters in the world as far as the situation in Palestine is concerned. When we look at the casualties, Dr. Maleeha, latest casualties are 34,789 plus 78,204, so it's 100,000 plus, a mix of those who've been injured and those who have been butchered. At the same time, the number of women and children is the maximum percentage amongst the casualties since the 7th of October. Add to that those who are still buried under the rubbles of all the buildings, hospitals, education institutions that Israel has destroyed. Add to that, we've got more than 9,500 Palestinians who are incarcerated in different jails, many of them without any case whatsoever. Whenever this ends, I don't know when this is going to end, Dr. Maleeha, but whenever this ends, who is going to take the blame?
Well, it's pretty obvious who's going to take the blame. I think the blame rests primarily with Israel, and then, of course, with the United States, which has enabled Israel and continued to arm Israel while Israel has waged this brutal war on the people of Palestine. So I think that is pretty clear. And as I said before, I think there's also a collective failure. Of course, some countries are more responsible for what happened than others. But collectively speaking, it is a failure of the international community. For 7 months, we have seen what you just described, a horrendous situation. The number of casualties in just 7 months, children, famine, destruction of homes, devastation, people being completely unrooted, and, they have nowhere to go anymore. The last sort of refuge for them was in Rafah, and that's now under attack. So there is a collective failure, there's no question about it. There's a moral failure, there's a political failure, there's also a failure of humanity. I mean, if on such an issue, there is no humanitarian response of the kind that could alleviate the plight of the Palestinian people, so then what do we have? What we have is a failure of humanity.
Do we foresee some kind of a role of the International Criminal Court or the International Court of Justice? We saw the International Court of Justice getting together on this Palestinian conflict. They did warn Israel not to go towards genocide, but that, as you know, Israel has paid no heed to it. Then comes the International Criminal Court, to which Israel has already, launched different statements and threatened directly or indirectly the International Criminal Court. What remains to be seen in your point of view as far as the validity of any statements or decisions taken by the International Court of Justice or the International Criminal Court is concerned? Do you feel they are as vulnerable as the United Nations or the United Nations Security Council?
I think they are irrelevant. I mean, if they can't stop what is happening and has continued to happen for 7 months, what is their role? Why are they there? They failed. So sadly, one has to conclude that there is an overall failure because nobody has stepped in to stop this terrible war. There is no ceasefire. Even today, the talks that are supposed to be pursuing or seeking a ceasefire, they're all up in the air. We don't know whether they will even proceed in any serious way. So, I mean, these bodies it's all very well for the International Court of Justice and for the Security Council to be expressing sort of views and warning Israel, etc. But what has that actually amounted to? I mean, how has that been translated into anything that has stopped the Israelis? It hasn't. So that is the question that has to be asked. I think their record is before us, and it's a dismal record.
Finally, Dr. Maleeha, understanding diplomacy and the world much, much better than hundreds of thousands of people like myself, I'd like your point of view on what you are foreseeing as far as this war, genocide, ethnic cleansing in the next coming weeks or the next 6 months is concerned. What do you foresee is going to happen in the Middle East?
Well, that's a very good question, and I think it's very hard to answer that because it depends on how it all plays out in the end. If in the end, like Israel is proceeding by this ground offensive that it wants to mount, and that will lead to another bloodbath, there's still the morning after. So what happens the morning after? Who will then be responsible for the reconstruction of Gaza? Who will be responsible for running Gaza? When will the Israeli military occupation of Gaza end? The deal that Hamas agreed to, that the Israelis haven't, the ceasefire agreement, that had many components, and one of its components was this as well. It was, of course, a phased, it envisaged a phased process where Israel was supposed to withdraw gradually, and Hamas was also supposed to release hostages in phases. Plus, I think the kind of humanitarian access that was needed, that also was written into the agreement. But the question is, how will the rehabilitation of these people who have been uprooted from their homes, how will the devastation, how will it all be rebuilt? I don't think, there's been enough focus on this. So it's very hard to envisage what might happen. As I said, it depends on how this all ends. The best would be for the Netanyahu government really to collapse in the face of public pressure or upheaval. That could open the way then for some kind of a post war agreement. But while Netanyahu is there, he has completely ruled out even what is backed by international consensus, which is a two-state solution. He believes in a one-state solution, which of course is hardly a solution. So it's very difficult to say how it will all pan out and what could be what could come in the aftermath of this war. What is needed, we know what is needed. What is needed is for reconstruction, rehabilitation, massive assistance, and for Gaza to be ruled by the Palestinians themselves, regardless of who is elected. It's not for outsiders to choose who runs Gaza and how it is run. But whether all of this is accepted is hard. I think it's an open question.
All right. Well, it is an open question nevertheless, and we don't know what's going to happen. But the next coming days are extremely crucial as far as A, the possible invasion of Rafah, and B, of course, this ceasefire agreement or truce agreement between the Palestinian and the Israeli sides. Thank you very much, Dr. Maleeha Lodhi, to have joined us, to have given us your eminent point of view as far as this deteriorating situation in Palestine and the Middle East is concerned. Thank you, ma'am, to have joined us. Let's come to our second story. And our second story concerns the relations between Pakistan and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Now, a 50-member high-level business delegation under the leadership of Saudi Deputy Investment Minister Ibrahim Al-Mubarak is attending a two-day Pakistan-Saudi Arabia investment conference that opened in Islamabad yesterday to explore investment opportunities in different sectors as well as to forge strong bonds with local entrepreneurs. Now, Pakistan and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia have had a long-term, multifaceted relationship that has only strengthened with time. We have seen the flurry of visits between the Pakistani side and the Saudi side happening in the last couple of weeks. And this visit is only strengthening the whole resolve by both sides to further cement the economic ties. We've been joined by Dr. Niaz Murtaza. He's a political economist, to talk more on this. Dr. Saab, thank you very much to have joined us. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif Saab expresses the confidence that the visit of this Saudi delegation, headed by its Deputy Minister for Investment, will augur well for the country's future. How do you see this? This 50-member delegation, the different meetings that it has had, the different statements that have emanated from the Deputy Minister for Investment of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia as well as the Pakistani side. What are your expectations?
Well, I think things are looking up. As you know, these conversations about Saudi investment have been going on for 3 or 4 years now. They started in 2019. But unfortunately, nothing came out of it because of various political and economic reasons. But clearly, if you see the last 1.5 months, there has been, a flurry of activities, 2 visits already by the Prime Minister, then this 50-member Saudi investment delegation coming in, and now there are strong news that, the Saudi, Wali-e-Ahd, the Prince, Mohammed bin Salman may come himself in the next, 2 or 3 weeks. So that does suggest that, unlike the past, things are becoming more and more concrete, and, there are actual proposals on the ground, and that's good news, just given, how the economic situation in Pakistan has been. We've had stagflation, high inflation with slow growth. And when you have high inflation and interest rates are 22%, that means that, local investment is hard to come by because the cost of borrowing is so high. So then, the other avenue left is that, you try to get foreign direct investment so that, some of, your foreign exchange currency requirements as well as your investment requirements get resolved to some extent. And then it will also tie in with, the expected deal with IMF in the next 1 or 2 months. The IMF delegation is also coming in this month. And I think in some ways they may both be tied to each other. The Saudis will be looking at, Pakistan having an IMF deal to give them an assurance of, macroeconomic stability, whereas the IMF would also be looking at that Pakistan can arrange other forms of foreign foreign exchange inflows, because, the IMF amount, even if it's about 6 to 8 billion, is not enough. Pakistan needs much more than that. So given all that, I think it's a good omen. Things are already, stabilizing a bit. We are certainly not out of the woods yet, but at least, you can see some stability. But that doesn't mean that we can afford to relax. We've done the hard work for stability. The work for growth still needs to be done.
All right. Niaz, Murtaza, Minister for Petroleum Musaddiq Masood Malik talks on collaboration and cooperation between the Kingdom and Pakistan in different sectors that includes mines, minerals, tourism, agriculture, infrastructure development. In your point of view, what are the possible avenues for economic cooperation between the two countries?
Well, foreign direct investment solves, the foreign currency constraints, but then we should also be a little bit choosy about what kind of, foreign direct investment comes in and what kind of industries that goes in, because we've seen that in the past that we got foreign direct investment, but it did not immediately create, export earnings. Any investor who invests in Pakistan is not doing it for welfare, and they'll expect that, pretty soon after the initial groundwork and, establishment period, they will be able to, earn an income, and they'll be able to repatriate the profits. So in order to, cover that repatriation of profits, it's also important that the kind of investment that is done generates more than enough, export revenue so that, the profit repatriation is covered, as well as there is some surplus, foreign reserves left for Pakistan. So if it's, things like, mining, which results in, exports, that would be good. If it's in terms of tourism, which results in more people coming in, especially from, the oil-rich Gulf states, as well as, the Western states who spend some money, bring in some foreign investment, foreign currency, that would be good. So I think that should be one of the things that now that the investment delegation is here and the Prince will be coming to, try to, veer the investment in industries which can give us, an export potential.
Niaz, when the Saudi Deputy Investment Minister says that Saudi government and companies consider Pakistan a high priority economic investment and business opportunity, what is he referring to?
Well, the fact is that, things are, settling down economically, politically. But then, there is also the fact that, Pakistan and Saudi Arabia have a very long-standing, close relationship, mutually beneficial relationship. So I think he's referring to all those segments that, economically the situation is a bit better. Politically, we have a new government in place, and, the era of political turmoil is at least for the moment over. And then, the long-standing relationship. So I think he's referring to all that. But what I think is also important is that the next step for us is, to make sure that other investors also look at us in the same way, beyond, a country like Saudi Arabia, which has, a lot of, security stakes. That will be the day when, investors from all over the world look at Pakistan at a place where, they can invest safely. To some extent, the way things go in Bangladesh and India, because those countries, they basically get private investment, foreign private investment, although they also get, Saudi investment. India is getting a lot of that. But then besides that, they also get a lot of, private investment, and that helps you in a lot of way because, if you have a wide range of, foreign investors coming in, then you're not dependent on any one source of foreign investment because, foreign investment is fickle. So you do want to make sure that you diversify your sources of foreign investment. So that is the real challenge for the government, to make sure that the situation in Pakistan reaches that level where at least it is able to attract the same kind of, foreign investment from private resources that Bangladesh and India is able to do, even Sri Lanka to some extent.
Now, Niaz, Murtaza, what about public-private partnership between both the countries? Because this is what the Saudi dignitary also alluded to, that the public and private sectors of both countries can take their partnership to the next level. What do you propose if you were asked how the public and private sector of both the countries can take their partnership to the next level? We all know about the Vision 2030 as far as the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is concerned. Do you feel Pakistan can take advantage of it?
Well, yes, I think certainly. And, we are not just talking about Saudi Arabia. We are talking about developing ties with all the Gulf, states, UAE and Qatar included. So if we look at especially those two, then I think one fruitful way would be to look at, the reorganization of PIA, for example. So, we could look at, some of these Gulf airlines like Emirates, Arabia, Qatar Airways, whether, they could, take over at least the management and maybe even, some percentage of, the ownership, because you need, a strong party to, really take over and turn around, a behemoth like PIA, which has become, so unproductive and politicized. So you need a strong party. You just can't hand it over to anybody and everybody. They will not be able to do that, and I had seen, when I was living in Sri Lanka, I had seen that Emirates had taken over the management control of Sri Lankan Airlines, and they had done wonders. The service on Sri Lankan Airlines had become almost as good as that in Emirates Airlines. So we should look at, some deal in that airline business, then also, other investment opportunities like in tourism, there is an opportunity. So I think that is the way to go because, with full privatization, there is always, especially with PIA, there is the loss of complete control and sovereignty. So if it's more like a public partnership arrangement with PIA, that might be better than complete privatization.
All right. There's another thing. Our Minister for Commerce, Jam Kamal Khan, assures the Saudi delegation of extending full facilitation to any investor that come from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Now, when you assure full facilitation to investors, that means, the role of organizations such as the Special Investment Facilitation Council or SIFC becomes even more paramount, because that is why the SIFC was made in the first place, to facilitate for the ease of doing business. Do you feel the role of the SIFC in this context, whether it be with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and its investors or with other countries that evince interest in Pakistan, will become more important in the days to come, so as to facilitate all those investors who want to come and do business with Pakistan?
Well, of course, certainly SIFC is one forum, but then let's remember, when somebody comes and invests in Pakistan, they will not be, they may initially deal with SIFC, but ultimately, they'll have to go and deal with a whole variety of, other players as well. So, for example, if somebody is going to go and invest in a place like Balochistan, in, far-flung areas where Rikodek is, which is one of the investment opportunities that is under consideration, then it has to be IFC is, of course, a sort of a decision-making forum based here in Islamabad, and of course it has a lot of authority. But then you also have to make sure that the government agencies involved even at the Balochistan level would be up to the task. Then there'd also be issues in terms of reinvestment of profitability. So it's important to invest in SIFC, but it should be seen as a stopgap measure, and the real thing is to boost the capacity of our regular government agencies that would be involved in handling foreign investment, like the Board of Investment, the Board of Industry, the Ministry of Industries, Commerce, the whole federal government, the provincial government that would be involved. So I think it would be good to look at investing in the capacity of all those agencies as well.
Niaz, Murtaza, what should be the mechanism or methodology of a B2B, business-to-business relation between the Pakistani and the Saudi side that will benefit ultimately both the ends?
Well, I think things are moving in the right track. It's once the government of Saudi Arabia gives its backing, obviously that alone gives a lot of confidence to Saudi investors who may otherwise be a bit leery of coming to Pakistan, not sure what they would expect. But once they see that, the Saudi government is fully behind it, that will, give them confidence. But then, as I said, we should look at, a situation where we don't really need the crutches of, these governments, etc. All investors should feel comfortable that they alone, on the guarantee of the government of Pakistan and the infrastructure within Pakistan, find Pakistan a safe and secure place to, invest in Pakistan. That should be our long-term goal.
Now, Niaz, our Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif was in Saudi Arabia in the end of April to attend the World Economic Forum special meeting on global collaboration, growth and energy that was held there. And that was an important meeting. There were very important meetings on the sidelines that were also held between the Pakistani side and other important countries, including the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Do you feel countries like Pakistan can play a consequential role in bilateral and regional collaboration for sustainable and inclusive growth, as emphasized by our Deputy Prime Minister and the Minister for Foreign Affairs?
Well, yeah, I think the regional angle is important because, the unfortunate thing is that Pakistan right now has very poor land connectivity. We have 4 neighbors and, one of them is Iran, which is facing, global sanctions, and we also have some tensions which have improved now, gone down. Then, there is Afghanistan, which is also facing global sanctions, and then on the other side, there is India, with whom we don't have good relations. So that just leaves a very narrow, corridor with China, and the mountains, play their role in, creating constraints. So all around Pakistan, we need to see that the land connectivity is quite poor, and otherwise Pakistan can play a very important role in linking South Asia with the Middle East and beyond that into, even Europe, because you saw that conference that had happened in India. They had come up with such a convoluted map, which was partly going through the sea and then back to the land and then back into the sea, primarily because of the fact that, Pakistan and Iran lie on the way. So if somehow, otherwise this is the straightest route, India to Pakistan, Pakistan to Iran, Iran to Turkey, and then Europe. It's such a straightforward and short route. So again, with economics, then, the geoeconomics is important and how we can work around so that, those land logged nature of ours reduces and there is good land connectivity. That would be, really good for Pakistan in the future.
Now, Pakistan exports many materials. I mean, the trade is, of course, increasing between both the countries. There are textiles, rice, meat, food, vegetables, medicine, cement, steel. Many industrial products are, exchanged between the two as far as the import and export mechanism is concerned. As this opportunity has also provided lucrative opportunities for Saudi investors to come and invest in Pakistan, how can Pakistan, in your point of view, further enhance on the existing mechanisms of economic collaboration between the two countries?
Well, I think, again, it's a matter of, increasing the capacities of our government apparatus, because one of the big constraints that had happened in the last 3 or 4 years, why the Saudi prince's visit and his promise to invest 20 billion, part of the issue was political, but then there was the economic angle that we were just not able to, operationalize good quality investment proposals and present them to the Saudi side. Our bureaucrats were not used to that kind of task of doing, sophisticated financial, economic, technological, commercial analysis and, present them in, proposals as well as, very sharp kind of, presentations. So that's what we have to do. We have to develop the capacity of the government structures so that, we have able and, really proficient kind of professionals who can talk at the same wavelength as, the Saudi side, who have, this access to experts from all over the globe, and, they do analysis which is almost as good as what, the Europeans or the Western, investors do. So that's where we are lacking. We really need to, develop our capacities to be able to present proposals which other sides will be willing to, take on.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Niaz Murtaza, political economist, who have joined us, who have discussed the different gamut of economic collaboration or cooperation that exists between the Islamic Republic of Pakistan and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and how this visit of the different entrepreneurs and businessmen from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia will further cement this in different avenues we are going to see in the coming days, because there's also going to be a delegation of the Pakistani side that is going to visit the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to further enhance this collaboration. And of course, we are only seeing good things as far as both the countries is concerned. Let's come to our last two stories. First concerns Turkey, where a mosque has reopened that has been converted from an ancient Orthodox church in Istanbul, and now it is open for Muslim worship 4 years after President Recep Tayyip Erdogan had ordered its transformation. Now the kariyemosque was formerly for a Byzantine church, then a mosque, and then it became a museum. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan had ordered the building to be reconverted into Muslim place of worship in 2020. So that adds another mosque that has a lot of historical background for the people in Turkey. Finally, individuals carrying 2 copies of the APOE4 gene are virtually guaranteed. This is not, in a positive sense, but more in a negative sense, to develop the Alzheimer's and face symptoms at an earlier age. This has been said by researchers at an international press conference on Monday. The study that was made was set to redefine such carriers as having a new genetic form of the mind-wasting disease. Now, this reclassification, ladies and gentlemen, will change the current norms surrounding Alzheimer's research, diagnosis, and approaches to treatment. The study has been published in the journal Nature Medicine. Now, it might be very complicated to listen to by laymen such as you and myself, but the fact is that Alzheimer's is a disease that is a reality, not as much in our community. It is there, but it's more prominent or predominant in the Western world. But we need to find a solution to diseases such as these, such as cancer, such as HIV, such as so many different forms of diseases that are currently prevalent in the world. A lot of progress is being made. A lot of progress also being made on how these diseases come about, and this research is just one step in the right direction. Let's hope this gives rise to finally finding a drug that could also stop Alzheimer's at an early stage. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we come to an end of today's newsroom. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow with new stories and segments that pertain to us, you and Pakistan. Stay safe. Allah Hafiz.